Costello texts Ben the day after his realization that Delilah needed to be unearthed. He'd had his moments wondering who she was and why she was so interested in him. At least now he knew she wasn't Reiko from Bulgaria, as he jokingly suspected on several occasions. So he wasn't being catfished, but reading back through their messages, she was certainly fishing. Ben texted back and told Costello he was in downtown getting a tattoo and wanted to get together if possible. His artist was taking a quick smoke break but looked to be done around happy hour if he wanted to grab a drink. Ben felt confident in Costello's ability to now have a drink without waking up in his clothes the next day. They agreed to meet at Costello's old bar. He didn't even realize he would be returning to where he first met Jenna because he was fixated on learning more about Delilah. Ben offering the meetup without Costello even mentioning it played perfectly into his surreptitious sleuthing. 1700 hours. Costello found a spot in the back at a tufted couch and waited for Ben to arrive. The few moments alone were enough to flash him back behind the bar and instantly reminisce about the night he first saw Jenna. Watching her talk to her friend while she never pulled her eyes off of him was etched in his hippocampus at 0.3 times speed. Reading her lips and being able to interpret every word seemed like she spoke a language only she and him spoke. Just as his deep dive got emotional, Costello heard Ben call his name from the bar. They each waved each other over, but Ben won the battle. They were going to set bar top. Ben peeled back the wrap and showed off his tattoo. A raven carrying a caterpillar on his forearm. Costello knew exactly what the tattoo represented and why it was important for him to see it. Ben always talked with Costello about his younger brother who passed away. A sophomore in high school who was brilliant beyond his years, yet found himself mostly comfortable with a crowd of troublemakers who constantly put him in some kind of jeopardy. Ben always compared him to a caterpillar who refused to become the monarch butterfly he should have become. He was invited to an end-of-year party with his junior friends who were becoming seniors. They went to a spot in the Baldy Mountains, and Ben's brother took some pills that sadly were laced with fentanyl. The tragedy was they were so close to a hospital, but none of them could find their way down the mountain fast enough. Ben had a recurring dream where he was a raven flying overhead and saw his brother being poisoned by the fentanyl. He came down and carried him off to the hospital. In his dream, he looked down and his brother is a vibrant caterpillar who was just about to become a butterfly. Costello couldn't contain the tears pouring down his face as he looked at the tattoo. He even debated whether he would get into the conversation about Delilah. Ben really wasn't in a bad place. He seemed on top of the world. Costello reconsidered. Ben even came right out and asked what prompted the contact. Costello told him he'd been talking through messaging with a girl named Delilah, or @Dollscars, and it had been quite consistent. Ben just said, okay. Apparently Ben didn't know her by either of those names. Costello said she's been very inquisitive, and before he would ever move forward with actually meeting her in person, he wanted to make sure she was who she says she was. Ben asked how exactly he could help. Costello said, "Remember when I was in Seattle and you FaceTimed me?" Ben replied, "Vaguely." Costello said, "Well, you accidentally FaceTimed me to tell me about the new Arts District contract and you were at a bar. While we were talking, there was a girl sitting next to you and she said goodbye to me. She called me Aaron. I think it's the girl Delilah." Ben's eyes lit up. He remembered her. Delilah was Catherine Preen. He ran into her at the bar that day he FaceTimed Costello. He also had just enough to drink that day that he told her just enough about Costello's, Aaron's, struggles, and how he was working towards getting him back on his feet and working again. Catherine was a rogue journalist who had just finished her shift bartending and found a stool next to Ben. She was quite fond of him, and he found himself quite fond of her. She was working part-time at the bar because she couldn't maintain a position at any paper, website, or magazine. She had extreme ethics issues and would do anything to sell a story. Ben became very concerned because she lost her credentials and transitioned to full-time food and drink service jobs. He asked Costello to see the account to confirm it was in fact her. He looked at the first photo and said, "Yep, that's Catherine. Her pseudonym is Delilah. Brother, I don't know why she's playing you, but end that ASAP." Costello wasn't a political pundit, but he paid enough attention in high school government classes to know a free and fair press was part of the fabric of America's democracy within its republic. He despised journalists who failed to respect their freedom to be truth seekers and challenge those in power. So many find selling a story more important than holding together the 200-year experiment we call democracy. So was this rogue journalist looking to wait for him to fall down the rabbit hole again? Or did she have suspicions about his involvement in the Seattle murders? Costello knew one thing for sure. You don't need communications classes to find out information about people. Just some tenacity and the ability to hide behind your leads. Before he could move any further towards finding answers about his personal involvement in the Seattle murders, he would need to rule out everything he could about @Dollscars, Miss Catherine Preen. Ben closed up their tab and paid the bill. He grabbed Costello on the collarbone and said, "I'm not proud of this, but you need to know as much as possible. Catherine and I had a short fling back in 2018. Living with my girlfriend at the time, I was disgusted with myself, so I ended it. All I know about Catherine is she moved to Portland shortly after we broke things off. She has relatives in Olympia, Washington, but she doesn't speak to them. I wish I had more. But this should help you put the whole idea of any meetup with her behind you, I hope." Costello said yes. Problem was, he meant no.